welcome my dear students to another session of literary theory class. So, we were discussing about liberal humanism. So, let's continue with liberal humanism, different facets of liberal humanism. Last class, we discussed the 10 tenets of liberal humanism with images and supplementary materials. So, let's move on with the topic. And that too, further, we are going to see about liberal humanism and how it was called. Liberal humanism was called theory before theory. Why? Because liberal humanism is a term applied to theory that came before theory, that came before the existence of other theories, and that's why it is called theory before theory. To understand or comprehend liberal humanism, you should know the history of English language. Some basic facts about the history of English language and English education and how it developed. You should also know about higher education and development of English as an academic subject in England. In England, how was English developed as an academic subject? That you're supposed to know. Before 1820s, higher education was imparted based on a system which was laid down in the Middle Ages. So before the landmark year of 1820s, higher education system was a system that was being followed from the time of the Middle Ages. That is, from Middle Ages, whatever the system was being followed, it continued down through the years, over the years till 1820s. Higher education was controlled by the Church of England. So the Church of England was the authority which controlled the higher education in England, of course. And there were only two universities, and those two universities were Oxford University and Cambridge University. Well, we'll go into the depths of the rise of English studies. Until the first quarter of the 19th century, higher education in England was a Church of England monopoly. So until the first quarter of 19th century from 1800 to 1900. So the first quarter means from 1800 to 1825. So that is the first quarter of 19th century. How was the higher education like in England? Higher education in England was a Church of England monopoly. What is monopoly? That is, Church of England had complete control over the higher education. You must have heard of the board game Monopoly. നമ്മൾ ലൂഡോ കളിക്കും, ചെസ്സ് കളിക്കും, അതുപോലെ സ്നേക്ക് ആൻഡ് ലാഡേഴ്സ് കളിക്കും. അതുപോലെ ഒരു ഗെയിമാണ് മൊനോപ്പൊളി. You can trade, you can buy land, you can buy houses, you can buy cars, you deal with money, you have card, and there are many more machines. You must have seen in media, social media and television that there's a board game. You must have played also. So here, what you mean by that monopoly is that you should have a complete control over the things that are available for trading and for land and for business, those kind of dealings. So here monopoly is complete control. So Church of England had monopoly over the higher education over there, that is in England. Further, there were only two universities, Oxford and Cambridge, that we saw before in the last slide, that there were two universities, Oxford and Cambridge University. These universities were divided into small individual colleges run like monastic institutions. So these universities, that is Oxford and Cambridge universities, were divided into small individual, individual units of colleges, and they were run like monastic institutions. Monastic institutions, monastic institutions means those connected with monks or monasteries. Monks, Buddhist monks ഒക്കെ അറിയാലോ അതുപോലെ Buddhist, here it's not Buddhist, I just give you an example. So monastic institutions are institutions connected with monks or monasteries. And here only men could attend them. These institutions were attended by only men. That means it was male oriented. Females not yadu sthano illa. It was male oriented, attended by only men. And the students had to be Anglican communicants. The students had to be Anglican communicants. Anglican means um, Anglicans are members of the Church of England. Anglican means members of the Church of England. And communicant, here this one, communicant. Communicant is a person who receives communion in a Christian church. First Holy Communion എന്നൊക്കെ നിങ്ങൾ കേട്ടിട്ടുണ്ടോ? മാമോദീസ, ഫസ്റ്റ് ഹോളി കമ്മ്യൂണിയൻ, ആദ്യ കുർബാന, അത് നിങ്ങൾ കേട്ടിട്ടുണ്ടോ? അതാണ് ഫസ്റ്റ് ഹോളി കമ്മ്യൂണിയൻ, ആദ്യ കുർബാന. അതുപോലെ ഈ കമ്മ്യൂണിയൻ എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞു കഴിഞ്ഞാൽ, കമ്മ്യൂണിക്കൻറ്റ് എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞു കഴിഞ്ഞാൽ, എ പേഴ്സൺ ഹു റിസീവ്സ് കമ്മ്യൂണിയൻ in a Christian church is a communicant. Okay, so all these are related with the Church of England, whether it be Anglican or communicant, means it's related and pertaining to the Church of England. And we told that it was exclusively for male members, that also we said. And students had to be Anglican communicants. Along with that, they had to attend college chapel. College chapel they had to attend. നമ്മുടെ സ്കൂൾസിലും കോളേജസിലൊക്കെ ചാപ്പൽ ഉണ്ടാവും. Chapel is a room for Christian worship. It's a small room, a miniature of a church, and it's a small room for Christian worship. That is chapel. The teachers were ordained ministers. Ordained ministers. Ordained എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞാൽ എന്താണ്? Those who got to be made priest. Priest ആവാൻ പോകുന്ന ആൾ, അല്ലെങ്കിൽ you are trying to become a priest, that is ordained, or ordination. You are trying to be or trying to make a priest out of you, that is ordained or ordination. So teachers were ordained ministers. Ministers who are going to become priests or who are training to become priests. They were unmarried, that is teachers were unmarried, so that they could live in the college. They did not have any connection or they did not have any liabilities of a family, and they could live in college and teach the students. The subjects taught in the institutions were classics of ancient Greek and Latin literature, first one. Second one, divinity. Divinity is divinity was taken or was dealt, that subject was dealt by those seeking ordination, that is teachers who were seeking or who were waiting for ordination, trying to become priests. They dealt the subject, or they took the subject divinity. And the third one was mathematics. So subjects were classics of ancient Greek and Latin literature, first one. Second one, divinity. And the third one, mathematics. Catholics, Jews, Methodists and atheists were barred from entry into these educational institutions. Catholics, Roman Catholics, Jews, those who follow Judaism, the Jews. Methodist is a member who broke away from the Church of England. That means that this member was formerly in the Church of England, but later broke away from the membership and went to some other community, that is a Methodist. And atheist, you all must be knowing, one who does not believe in God. So all these sections, that is Catholics, Jews, Methodists and atheists, were barred from entry into these educational institutions. Hence, in effect, they were barred from professions and civil service in general. Since the Middle Ages up to 1820s, see, from the Middle Ages to 1820s, higher education, the system of higher education was the same. It had not changed. That is, the system of higher education was intact from the Middle Ages to 1820s. It did not have any change. It did not undergo any kind of transformation. It was as such. Attempts were made. Several attempts were made to bring about changes. The attempts were made to reform the situation. Yes, to reform the situation of education, then expand higher education, and also introduce practical subjects into the curriculum of learning, of course. But because of certain conservative forces, yes, conservative forces, however, these attempts were not fruitful, which means that these attempts did not work. Finally, there was a breakthrough in the year 1826. So, in the year 1826, there was a breakthrough, meaning that there was an important development. What is that important development, or what was that important development? A university college was founded in London, and it had a charter, and the charter was to award degrees to men and women of all religions. So that was an important development. That is a university college. It was founded in London, and that college had a charter. Charter is a policy or a statement or a document. That is a charter. You put forward a policy, and that policy was that they would award degrees to men as well as women, to both the genders, men and women of all religions for that matter. So that was a breakthrough. Then following that, in the year 1828, in the year 1828, English was offered as a subject for study. It was followed by the appointment of the first English professor in the year 1829. So, in the year 1829, the first English professor was appointed. So, breakthrough development in 1826, or breakthrough in 1826, was at a university college in London, and where they would award degrees for all the genders, men and women of all religions. 1828, English was offered as a subject of study. 1829, the first English professor was appointed. This English which we are talking about now is not the one which we know as English. It was a study of English language, and this study of English language used literature as a source of linguistic example. Now we don't do that, but here they used literature as a source of linguistic examples. Linguistic, to study the language scientifically, they used literature. Then in the year 1831, English literature as such was first taught at King's College, London, in the year 1831. This was the one which later became London University. So, in the year 1831, English literature was first taught at King's College, and you should know the year 1831, and this was later London University. It was in the year 1840 F.D. Morris was appointed professor at the King's College. So, F.D. Morris was one of the pioneers of liberal humanism, and it was in the year 1840 that he was appointed professor at King's College. Morris regarded literature as a peculiar property of the middle class and expression of their values. So, according to Morris, literature was a peculiar property of the middle class, especially middle class, not the higher class or lower class, and he felt that it was an expression of the values of the middle class. For him, the middle class represents the essence of Englishness. He felt that middle class is representative of Englishness or English language or English literature. Why? We have to know the reason why. That is because the aristocracy is part of the international elite and the poor ensures their survival. Now, both other classes other than the middle class are the higher class and the lower class. Higher class is the aristocracy. This one. Aristocracy means nobility or people belonging to the higher social class or high social strata of the society. So, they were regarded as the elite group. Elite group is powerful group. നമ്മൾ elite hospital എന്നൊക്കെ പറയും, elite bread എന്നൊക്കെ പറയും. It is the wrong pronunciation. It is elite. Elite, which means powerful, rich, intelligent. That is elite. So it is not elite, it's a wrong pronunciation, it is elite. So aristocracy is part of the international elite. Aristocracy or the higher class is part of the international elite, whereas poor people always wants to ensure their survival. They had interest in their survival only because they took pains to make both ends meet. They wanted their survival. They gave prime importance to their survival. So naturally, Englishness belonged to the middle class. Morris recognized the political dimension of this fact. And what was that political dimension? That is, educated people would believe that they belonged to England. As Englishness belonged to the middle class. Middle class was educated because they learned the subject of English and also the other subjects, obviously the other subjects as well. And once educated, people would believe that England belonged to them. Like they had a sense of belongingness, and this was a political dimension involved. As a matter of fact, English study is a substitute for religion too. English as a subject of study was a substitute. It was something which replaced the study of religion. Let's see how it is. There was a minimal attendance of lower class at the church. Minimal attendance of people below middle class. People below middle class is lower class. So lower class hardly attended the church. They were not there as a majority group in the church, in the ceremonies of the church. So there was a worry regarding this factor. And what was that worry? Worry was that lower class would feel that they had no stake in the country. Lower class would naturally feel that they had no existence in the country, that is England, that they were not existing, they did not have a place of their own, a room of their own in the country of England. That's what lower class would feel because they did not attend church or they did not get education. They had no religion. Uh, they had no religion, which means that nobody taught them morality and restraint. They were not going to church, so they did not learn morality, they did not learn restraint, and they did not learn religion. Since they were not going to church, they didn't learn religion or moral principles, or they did not have a moral sense, and they did not have restraint. What is restraint? Control. Able to control yourself, able to restrict yourself instead of a free expression of emotions. So that is with a lower class, and the worry was that they would rebel. They would rebel, and it would be something like French Revolution. So there was a worry amongst the other groups that they would rebel, and some sort of a revolution similar to French Revolution might take place. And the year 1830s, there was Chartist agitation. This is Chartist agitation of 1830s, and it was thought to be a start of this. Start of what? Start of the rebellious nature of the lower class. And almost at this time, that is in the year 1830s, the first English courses was introduced. So it was in the year 1830s that Chartist agitation began, the start of Chartist agitation, and also it was in the year 1830s that the first English courses was introduced. This is a chart on the periods of English literature that you ought to know as a student of English, especially when you're learning the literary theories, and also if you are a student with English as your core subject. So let's begin. This is Old English period, this one, 450 to 1066 is the Old English period, otherwise known as Anglo-Saxon period. This one, 1066 to 1500, is the Middle English period. The Middle English period. We saw that from Middle English period till 1820s, somewhere here, the Romantic period. The system of higher education was the same. Then comes this one, 1500 to 1660. And that period is the Renaissance or early modern period, which is subdivided into 4, 1, 2, 3 and 4. First one is Elizabethan age. From 1558 to 1603 is the Elizabethan age, followed by 1603 to 1625, which is the Jacobean age, 1625 to 1649, which is the Caroline age, and 1649 to 1660, which is the Commonwealth period, otherwise known as Puritan interregnum. So, Renaissance or early modern divided into Elizabethan, Jacobean, Caroline and Commonwealth period. Now, that is followed by Neoclassical period from 1600 to 1785. Neoclassical period is classified into 3, 1, 2 and 3. 1660 to 1700 is the Restoration age. 1700 to 1745 is the Augustan age. 1745 to 1785 is the age of sensibility or the age of Dr. Johnson. So, Neoclassical period classified into Restoration, Augustan and age of sensibility, rather age of Dr. Johnson. This is followed by the Romantic period from 1785 to 1832. Okay, Romantic period followed by Victorian period, Victorian 1832 to 1901, and that is subdivided into Pre-Raphaelites and Aestheticism and Decadence. So, Victorian period is subdivided into two, the Pre-Raphaelite period beginning from 1848 to 1860 and Aestheticism and Decadence from 1880 to 1901. It extends up to 1901. Then comes 1901 to 1914, that is the Edwardian period. So, 1901 to 14 Edwardian period, followed by 1910 to 1936, which is the Georgian period, and 1914 the modern period, followed by 1945 is postmodernism. From 1914 is the modern period, it extends like that, and from 1945, this one, it prolongs, it goes on, postmodernism period. So, we are in the postmodernism period. So, this chart you are supposed to know.